First contact alarm. Commander Drav Corvus stared at the sensor readout with all four of his eyes narrowed in disbelief. The mysterious vessel had appeared at the edge of the Vaxian Empire's territory less than an hour ago, and it had already managed to violate three of the fundamental laws of stellar navigation that the Empire had relied upon for millennia. "Run the calculations again," he ordered, his scaled skin flushing purple with agitation. "There must be a malfunction in the sensor array." Lieutenant Zix, a slender Vaxian with emerald scales and an impressive crest, moved her six-fingered hands rapidly across the holographic interface. "I've run the diagnostics 3 times, Commander. Every system is functioning at optimal capacity. The readings are accurate." The bridge of the Imperial vessel Sovereign Might fell silent as this information sank in. What they were witnessing should have been impossible. The unidentified ship was traveling at speeds that no known civilization had achieved, and it was doing so without producing the expected radiation signature of any conventional propulsion system. "If these readings are correct," Corvus said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "that vessel could reach any planet in our territory before we could mount an effective defense." Science Officer Vrel, whose additional pair of manipulator limbs marked him as a member of the scholarly caste, spoke up. "Commander, I believe we should notify the Imperial High Command immediately. This could represent a significant threat to the Vaxian Empire." Corvus nodded grimly. The Vaxian Empire had dominated this sector of the galaxy for over 12,000 cycles. Their technological superiority was unquestioned among the 17 species they had either conquered or assimilated into their domain. The appearance of a vessel with capabilities beyond their own was not merely surprising, it was terrifying. "Open a secure channel to High Command," Corvus ordered, adjusting his ceremonial collar, a symbol of his elevated status within the Imperial fleet. The massive viewscreen flickered to life, revealing the stern visage of Grand Admiral Thorn. The ancient Vaxian scales had faded to a pale blue with age, but his 6 eyes burned with the same intensity that had made him legendary among the Imperial forces. "Commander Corvus," Thorn growled, "this had better be important. I'm in the middle of planning the Emperor's Ascension Day celebration." Corvus performed the traditional gesture of subservience, touching his primary and secondary claws to his forehead. "My deepest apologies for the interruption, Grand Admiral. We've detected an unidentified vessel in Sector 7, moving at unprecedented speeds toward the Nexus Gateway. It matches no known signatures in our database and appears to be employing technology far beyond our current capabilities." The Grand Admiral's facial tendrils writhed with displeasure. "Are you telling me that some unknown species possesses technology superior to the mighty Vaxian Empire? The empire that has reigned supreme for 12,000 cycles. The empire whose military might has subjugated an entire sector of the galaxy. The evidence is conclusive, Admiral," Corvus replied, his throat sac contracting nervously. "And there's more. The vessel is not using any known form of propulsion. It's as if it's folding space around itself." Admiral Thorn's scales darkened to a dangerous shade of indigo. "Deploy the Third Fleet immediately. I want that vessel captured intact. If that's not possible, destroy it. We cannot allow some upstart species to possess technology that outclasses our own." "What would the Emperor say?" "As you command, Grand Admiral," Corvus responded with another gesture of subservience. As the communication ended, Corvus turned to his bridge crew. "You heard the Grand Admiral. Contact the Third Fleet and prepare intercept coordinates." Within minutes, the massive warships of the Third Fleet began moving into formation. Each vessel was a masterpiece of Vaxian engineering, sleek, deadly, and equipped with enough firepower to reduce a small moon to rubble. "Sir," called Lieutenant Zix, her voice rising with alarm, "the unidentified vessel has changed course. It's heading directly toward our position." "Put it on screen," Corvus ordered, his dorsal spines fully extending in a display of instinctive threat response. The view screen shifted to show a magnified image of the approaching ship, It was unlike anything Corvus had ever seen, smaller than expected, with a strange angular design that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. There were no visible weapon systems, no recognition beacons, nothing that would identify it as a vessel of war or peace. "Hail them," Corvus commanded, straightening his uniform. First contact situations were covered extensively in Imperial training, but that didn't make them any less nerve-wracking. "No response to our hails, sir," reported Communications Officer Eth, his antennae drooping slightly. "Try all frequencies, all known languages," Corvus insisted. "Even that horrible screeching the Zerks call communication." "Sir," Officer Vrel suddenly shouted, "the vessel has accelerated again. It's now moving at, this can't be right, 70% faster than our best ships." Corvus felt a cold sensation settle in his primary heart. Tactical analysis. If this is a warship, it could reach any planet in our territory before we could mount an effective defense. Tactical Officer Grex reported grimly. His spines were fully extended, a clear sign of distress. "And if it's not a warship?" Corvus asked, though he already knew the answer. "Then someone out there has technology that makes our fastest courier ships look like they're standing still," Grex replied. The bridge fell silent, the implications hanging heavy in the recycled air. The Vaxian Empire had maintained technological superiority for over 12,000 cycles. Their ships were the fastest, their weapons the most destructive, their shields the most impenetrable, or so they had believed until today. "Sir," Lieutenant Zix broke the silence, her voice unusually high-pitched. "The Third Fleet is in position, but the vessel has vanished from our scanners." "Vanished?" Corvus repeated incredulously. 20 warships with the most advanced tracking systems in the galaxy, and they just lost a ship traveling at 3/4 light speed. "It appears so, sir," she confirmed, frantically recalibrating her instruments. "Wait, we're receiving a transmission. Audio only." "Put it through," Corvus ordered, his heart's racing. A strange voice filled the bridge, speaking in perfect Vaxian standard, yet with an accent none of them had ever heard before. "Attention Vaxian vessel. This is Captain Elena Chen of the Earth ship Odyssey. We apologize for the alarm our presence may have caused. We are on a peaceful mission of exploration and had no intention of violating your territorial space. We were simply following an interesting quantum signature from your Nexus gateway." The bridge crew exchanged bewildered looks. Earth. No such planet existed in Imperial records. And how could these strangers speak Vaxian standard so fluently? Corvus cleared his throat. "This is Commander Drav Corvus of the Imperial Boundary Force. Your vessel is unregistered and has entered sovereign Imperial territory without authorization. Prepare to be boarded for inspection." A pause. Then what sounded like laughter came through the speakers. "I'm afraid that won't be possible, Commander. Our vessel isn't compatible with your docking systems, and our atmospheric requirements differ significantly. Perhaps we could arrange a meeting on neutral ground." "Neutral ground?" Corvus sputtered. "This is Imperial space. There is no neutral ground." "Well, that's awkward," the human captain replied, sounding remarkably unconcerned. "In that case, maybe we should just continue our survey elsewhere. No harm done, right?" Before Corvus could respond, Grand Admiral Thorne's face appeared on a secondary screen, his scales now almost black with rage. "Commander, why is the Third Fleet reporting that they've lost track of the target?" "Sir, we're currently in communication with the vessel," Corvus explained quickly. "They claim to be from a planet called Earth, on a peaceful mission. I don't care if they're on a mission to deliver exotic fruits to the Emperor himself." The Admiral roared. "Capture that ship now." The transmission from High Command cut off abruptly, leaving Corvus to face the human captain's voice once more. "I couldn't help overhearing," the human said, somehow sounding amused. "Your superior seems rather intense." "You have no idea," Corvus muttered before he could stop himself. "Captain Chen, I must insist you power down your engines and prepare for inspection. It's standard procedure for all vessels in Imperial space." "Commander," the human replied, her tone shifting from amused to serious. "I respect your position, but you should know that humans don't respond well to threats or demands. We prefer conversation and mutual respect." "Is that a threat?" Corvus asked, genuinely confused. The concept of mutual respect wasn't exactly emphasized in Imperial training manuals. "Not at all," Captain Chen responded cheerfully. "Just sharing some cultural insights. Oh, and you might want to tell your fleet to stop trying to lock weapons on us. It won't work, and it's making my security officer nervous. When he gets nervous, he tends to activate defensive systems. Nobody wants that." Officer Grex looked up from his console in alarm. "Sir, she's right. The Third Fleet can't get a weapons lock. It's like their targeting systems are being scrambled somehow." A cold sweat broke out on Corvus's skin. This was rapidly spiraling out of control. The Empire didn't negotiate with unknowns. It conquered them, or at the very least intimidated them into submission. Yet here was this human, this Captain Chen, speaking as if she held all the cards. "Perhaps," Corvus said carefully, "we could arrange a video conference. It would allow for face-to-face communication without the need for physical contact." "Now you're talking." The human captain sounded pleased. "We can set that up right away. Fair warning, though, humans look a bit different from what you might be used to. I assure you, Captain, the Empire has encountered countless species. We're quite accustomed to diversity," Corvus replied, silently signaling for his science officer to record everything. "Great. Establishing visual link now," Captain Chen said. The main view screen flickered, and suddenly they were face to face with the human. Corvus couldn't help but gasp. The creature was bizarre. Only 2 eyes, no visible protective scales or exoskeleton, and covered in what appeared to be artificial skins of various colors. But most disturbing was the lack of sensory appendages. How did they perceive the world around them with such limited sensory apparatus? "Greetings from Earth," Captain Chen said, showing a row of flat white bones in what Corvus would later learn was a smile. "I hope my appearance isn't too alarming." Corvus struggled to maintain his composure. "Not at all, Captain. The Empire values diversity in all its forms." Behind him, he could hear Officer Eth quietly retching into an emergency containment bag. "Wonderful," the human continued, seemingly oblivious to the discomfort she was causing. "Now let me introduce my first officer, Commander Jackson." The view widened to show another human, this one with darker external covering and a different configuration of facial features. "A pleasure to meet you," the new human said, making the same bone-displaying gesture as the captain. Corvus nodded stiffly, fighting the urge to shield his sensitive eyes from the sight. "The pleasure is mutual, Commander. Now, perhaps you could explain how your vessel managed to outpace our fastest ships and evade our tracking systems." The 2 humans exchanged glances. "Well," Captain Chen began, "let's just say that Earth's propulsion technology took some interesting turns in recent decades. We'd be happy to discuss a cultural and technological exchange, provided you can guarantee our safety, of course." Corvus felt trapped between the demands of his superiors and the reality of the situation before him. The Empire had encountered new species before, but never one that possessed technology so far beyond their own. The protocols were clear: capture, study, and if necessary, eliminate the threat. But something told him that the standard protocols wouldn't work in this case. "I believe that can be arranged, Captain," he said finally. "But I must warn you, the Vaxian Empire is not accustomed to equals." Captain Chen's smile widened, showing even more of those disturbing white bones. "That's all right, Commander. Neither are we. But we're quick learners." As the first part of this historic encounter drew to a close, Corvus couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy as he knew it was about to change forever, and the Vaxian Empire, for all its millennia of dominance, might not be ready for what was coming. The human advantage. The diplomatic chamber aboard the Vaxian flagship Sovereign might have been hastily reconfigured to accommodate the physiology of their unexpected visitors. The traditional acidic mist that Vaxians found so invigorating had been filtered out, the gravity adjusted to Earth standard, and the lighting dimmed to spare the humans' apparently sensitive visual organs. Commander Corvus watched with a mixture of fascination and discomfort as the human delegation entered the chamber. They moved with a fluid grace that seemed impossible for creatures lacking a proper exoskeleton. The way they balanced on just two limbs struck him as precarious and inefficient, yet they managed it with apparent ease. Captain Alina Chen led the small human contingent, accompanied by her first officer, Commander Jackson, and their science officer, a female called Dr. Navarro. All three wore simple blue uniforms with subtle insignia that presumably denoted their rank and specialization. "Thank you for arranging this meeting, Commander Corvus," Captain Chen said, performing a slight bow that Corvus recognized as a gesture of respect. "We appreciate your willingness to engage in diplomatic dialogue." Corvus performed the traditional Vaxian greeting, touching his primary and secondary claws to his forehead. "The Empire always seeks to understand new entities that enter our sphere of influence." What he didn't mention was that Grand Admiral Thorne had issued very specific orders regarding this encounter. Learn everything possible about human technology, particularly their propulsion systems, and determine if they posed a threat to Imperial security. If they did, the humans were to be neutralized by any means necessary. "Let me introduce my team," Corvus continued, gesturing to the Vaxians flanking him. "This is Science Officer Vrel, who oversees our research division, and Diplomatic Liaison Zax, who specializes in interspecies relations." The humans exchanged those unsettling bone displays with each member of the Vaxian delegation. Corvus noted with interest how their facial features seemed extraordinarily mobile, conveying a range of expressions that made their emotional states surprisingly easy to read, at least on a basic level. "I must admit," Corvus said as they all took their seats around the circular table, "we were quite surprised by your ship's capabilities. Our records contain no reference to your species or your homeworld." Captain Chen nodded. "That's not surprising. Earth is located in what you would call the Orion Spur, quite far from your territory. We've only recently developed technology that allows us to explore beyond our immediate stellar neighborhood." Recently, Science Officer Vrel couldn't contain himself. "Your propulsion system appears to operate on principles that our scientists have theorized but never successfully implemented. How long has your species been spacefaring?" The humans exchanged glances, and Corvus detected what seemed to be amusement in their expressions. "We achieved our first orbital flight less than 300 of our years ago," Dr. Navarro answered. "Our first interstellar voyage was completed just 47 years ago." The Vaxian delegation erupted in a chorus of disbelief. Scales flushed various colors, spines extended, and scent glands released pheromones of shock and confusion. "Impossible," Vrel declared, his auxiliary limbs gesticulating wildly. "The Vaxian Empire has been spacefaring for over 12,000 cycles. We have conquered 17 species and assimilated their technologies. Even with this combined knowledge, we have not achieved what your vessel demonstrates. No species could advance so quickly." Commander Jackson leaned forward, his dark eyes reflecting the chamber's ambient lighting. "With all due respect, Officer Vrel, humanity has always been driven by curiosity and necessity. When faced with limitations, we tend to find creative ways around them." Corvus observed the humans carefully. Their claims were outlandish, yet they showed no signs of deception that he could detect. If they were telling the truth, it represented a paradigm shift in the Empire's understanding of technological development, and a potential crisis for Imperial security. "Perhaps," Corvus suggested smoothly, "you could give us a general overview of how your propulsion system functions, as a gesture of goodwill between our peoples." Captain Chen's lips curved upward slightly. "I appreciate your interest, Commander, but our drive technology is considered sensitive information. I'm sure you understand. just as we wouldn't expect you to share the details of your weapon systems during our first meeting. Diplomatic liaison Zax intervened before Corvus could respond. Of course, Captain. The commander's enthusiasm for science sometimes overwhelms his diplomatic sensibilities. Perhaps we could discuss potential areas of cultural exchange instead. The conversation shifted to safer topics: comparative biology, basic astronomical knowledge, and cultural practices. Throughout the discussion, Corvus noted how the humans consistently revealed just enough information to be polite without sharing anything of strategic value. Despite their seemingly primitive appearance, these creatures were surprisingly adept at diplomatic maneuvering. After 3 hours of carefully orchestrated conversation, the meeting adjourned for a brief recess. As the humans were escorted to a designated resting area, Corvus and his officers gathered in a secure chamber for a private consultation. "They're hiding something," Brill insisted, his scales flushed a deep red with agitation. No species advances from primitive orbital capabilities to space-folding technology in less than 3 centuries. It's evolutionarily impossible. "I agree," Corvus said, pacing the chamber, "but they're too valuable to antagonize." Grand Admiral Thorne was explicit. "We need to acquire their technology, by any means necessary." Diplomatic liaison Zax's crest flattened against his skull, a sign of concern. "Commander, I must advise caution. These humans may appear physically unimposing, but their ship's capabilities suggest they possess defensive technologies we cannot counter. Are you suggesting the mighty Vaxian Empire should fear a handful of soft-skinned bipeds?" Corvus hissed, his dorsal spines extending involuntarily. "Not fear," Zax clarified. "Respect. There is a difference." Before Corvus could respond, an alarm blared throughout the ship. The communication panel on the wall activated automatically, displaying the panicked face of Lieutenant 6. "Commander, we have a situation in Engineering Section 7. There's been an explosion, and the quantum containment field is destabilizing. If it collapses completely, it could trigger a cascade reaction throughout the ship." Corvus felt his heart accelerate. A quantum containment failure was among the most dangerous emergencies that could occur on an Imperial vessel. If not addressed immediately, it could result in the complete disintegration of the Sovereign might and potentially damage nearby ships as well. "Evacuate all non-essential personnel from that section," he ordered. "I'll be there immediately." As Corvus and his officers rushed toward engineering, they encountered the human delegation already returning from their rest area, led by a visibly concerned Vaxian escort. "What's happening?" Captain Chen asked, falling into step beside Corvus without invitation, a breach of protocol that he was too preoccupied to address. "A technical emergency," Corvus replied tersely. "Nothing that concerns your delegation. Your escort will return you to your shuttle." Dr. Navarro, the human science officer, spoke up. "Commander, if there's been a quantum containment breach, every moment counts. I have experience with similar systems. Perhaps I could help." Corvus nearly stumbled in surprise. How did these humans know about quantum containment technology? And more importantly, how did they know there had been a breach? The alarm was Vaxian-specific, not translated for alien comprehension. Before he could formulate a response, they arrived at Engineering Section 7. The scene was chaos. Vaxian engineers frantically working at control panels, emergency lighting pulsing in warning patterns, and a visible distortion in the air surrounding the massive cylindrical structure that housed the quantum containment field. Chief Engineer Thox approached, his scales pale with stress. "Commander, the situation is critical. The explosion damaged 3 of the 7 stabilization nodes. We're trying to reroute power to compensate, but the field is collapsing faster than we can adjust. Estimated time to complete failure is 17 minutes. "What caused the explosion?" Corvus demanded. "Preliminary analysis suggests a power surge during routine maintenance, but that's not important now. We need to evacuate the ship, Commander. Once the field collapses, I might be able to help. Dr. Navarro interrupted, stepping forward without waiting for permission. Corvus was about to order her removed when Captain Chen placed a hand on his arm. A shocking breach of protocol that momentarily stunned him into silence. "Commander," she said quietly, "your ship is about to be destroyed. My science officer has extensive experience with quantum field dynamics. Let her help. What do you have to lose?" Pride, Corvus thought. Authority. The appearance of Vaxian superiority. But none of that would matter if the ship was destroyed. "Proceed," he told Dr. Navarro, his voice trained. The human woman moved to the nearest console, her fingers hovering over the unfamiliar interface. "May I?" she asked Chief Engineer Thox. The engineer looked to Corvus, who nodded reluctantly. What happened next astonished every Vaxian present. Instead of attempting to use the complex Vaxian control system directly, Dr. Navarro asked a series of rapid, precise questions about the quantum field parameters, power distribution networks, and stabilization algorithms. As Thox answered, she constructed a mental model of the system with remarkable speed. "The problem isn't the stabilization nodes themselves," she finally announced. "It's the feedback loop between them. Your system uses a harmonic resonance pattern to maintain field integrity, correct?" Fox nodded, his auxiliary limbs twitching with nervous energy. "The explosion disrupted the harmonic balance. You're trying to compensate by increasing power to the remaining nodes, but that's actually making the imbalance worse." She turned to Commander Jackson. "It's like a spinning top that's wobbling. Adding more speed just makes the wobble more violent." "So what do we do?" Corvus asked, setting aside his pride in the face of imminent destruction. "We need to deliberately destabilize the remaining nodes in a controlled pattern," Dr. Navarro explained. "Create a new harmonic balance that accommodates the damage rather than fighting against it." "That's counter to all established quantum containment protocols," Fox protested. "We're trained to maintain stability at all costs." Captain Chen stepped forward. "Sometimes the path to stability requires passing through deliberate instability first. It's a principle we found applies to many systems, mechanical, social, even biological." Corvus made his decision. "Do it," he ordered. What followed was a tense collaboration between the human science officer and the Vaxian engineering team. Dr. Navarro directed a series of precisely timed power adjustments to the remaining stabilization nodes, creating what appeared to be increasing instability in the containment field. Several Vaxian engineers protested, but Thox, recognizing the logic in her approach, enforced the commander's orders. For 3 terrifying minutes, the quantum distortion grew more pronounced, the ship's warning systems blaring with increasing urgency. Then suddenly, the chaotic energy patterns began to settle into a new configuration. The distortion remained, but it was stable, pulsing in a regular rhythm rather than expanding unpredictably. "It worked," Fox said, his voice filled with disbelief. "The field has stabilized in a new configuration. It's not optimal, but it's holding." Dr. Navarro nodded, a slight sheen of moisture visible on her forehead. "This is a temporary solution. You'll need to perform a complete shutdown and reset of the system within the next 12 hours, but it buys you time to prepare properly." As the immediate crisis passed, Corvus found himself reevaluating everything he thought he knew about these humans. They weren't just technologically advanced. They approached problems in fundamentally different ways than Vaxians. Where imperial protocol demanded adherence to established procedures, the humans demonstrated a flexibility of thought that was both alarming and impressive. "I believe," Captain Chen said quietly to Corvus as they left engineering, "that this incident demonstrates the potential benefits of cooperation between our peoples." Corvus nodded slowly. "Indeed. You have my gratitude for your assistance, Captain. Your science officer's quick thinking saved my ship and crew." "That's what humans do," she replied with that now familiar bone display. "We solve problems, particularly when the stakes are high. It's a trait that has served us well throughout our history." Later, after the human delegation had returned to their ship, Corvus sat alone in his private quarters, composing his report to Grand Admiral Thorne. How could he explain what had transpired? How could he convey the implications of encountering a species that had compressed millennia of technological development into a few centuries, and who approached problems with such unconventional thinking? More importantly, how could he convince the Admiral that attempting to capture or coerce these humans would be a catastrophic mistake? As he struggled with these questions, a notification appeared on his personal console. The humans had sent a data packet, specifications for a more efficient stabilization algorithm for quantum containment fields, freely given without demand for compensation. Attached was a personal message from Captain Chen. Commander Corvus, I hope this information proves useful in repairing your ship's systems. Consider it a gesture of goodwill between potential friends. My crew and I believe that the galaxy is vast enough for all species to explore and grow together, sharing knowledge rather than hoarding it. When you're ready for a more extensive exchange of ideas, we'll be continuing our survey of the Nexus Gateway for another 15 days. The invitation to visit our ship remains open, this time without the need for an inspection. With respect and hope for future cooperation, Captain Alina Chen, Earthship Odyssey. Corvus read the message 3 times, his perception of the universe shifting with each reading. The Vaxian Empire had dominated their sector of space for 12,000 cycles through technological superiority and military might. They had never encountered a species that offered partnership rather than demanding submission or offering it. He began to compose his report to Grand Admiral Thorne, choosing his words carefully. The Empire stood at a crossroads. They could attempt to maintain their dominance through force, likely triggering a conflict with a species whose capabilities they didn't fully understand, or they could embrace a new approach. Cooperation, exchange, mutual benefit. As he worked, Corvus found himself hoping that the Grand Admiral would recognize what he now saw clearly. The humans represented not just a challenge to Vaxian dominance, but an opportunity for the Empire to evolve beyond conquest into something new. Something, perhaps, greater. The alert indicating the human ship's departure from Vaxian space never came. Instead, 2 days later, the Odyssey remained in orbit around the Nexus Gateway, continuing its peaceful survey mission. And on the 3rd day, a small Imperial shuttle departed from the Sovereign Might, carrying Commander Corvus and a select delegation to accept Captain Chen's invitation. The bridge crew of the Odyssey welcomed their Vaxian visitors with those strange bone displays and open postures that Corvus now recognized as signs of genuine welcome. As Captain Chen led him on a tour of the remarkably compact vessel, he marveled not just at the technological innovations, but at the collaborative atmosphere among the crew. Your ship operates with far fewer personnel than ours, he observed as they entered what Chen called the engine room, a space a tenth the size of the Sovereign Might's engineering section, yet housing a propulsion system infinitely more advanced. We found that smaller, highly trained crews who understand each other's roles tend to perform better than rigid hierarchies, she replied. Every crew member on the Odyssey is cross-trained in at least 3 different specialties. Adaptability is valued as highly as expertise. Corvus absorbed this information thoughtfully. The Vaxian military structure had remained essentially unchanged for thousands of cycles. Specialization was prized. Deviation from established protocols was punished. Yet here was a species that seemed to thrive on flexibility and innovation. As the tour concluded in the ship's observation lounge, with the spectacular swirl of the Nexus Gateway visible through a transparent viewport, Captain Chen offered Corvus a beverage his environmental suit's sensors indicated was safe for Vaxian consumption. To new beginnings, she proposed, raising her own container in what he had learned was a traditional human gesture. Corvus mimicked the action with his serving claw. To new possibilities. As they contemplated the gateway together, Vaxian and human side by side, Corvus reflected on the report he had sent to Grand Admiral Thorne. He had emphasized not the potential threat the humans posed, but the unprecedented opportunity they represented. Whether the Admiral would see it the same way remained to be seen. But one thing was certain. The galaxy had changed. The sensors hadn't glitched. The human ship was real, and its capabilities were genuine. And the Vaxian Empire, for all its millennia of dominance, now faced a choice between evolution and obsolescence. Corvus had made his choice. He hoped the Empire would make the same one. As if reading his thoughts, Captain Chen spoke softly. You know, Commander, throughout human history, we've found that the most successful civilizations weren't necessarily the strongest or the most technologically advanced. They were the ones most willing to adapt, to learn, to incorporate new ideas. Corvus nodded, his dorsal spines relaxing in a gesture of agreement. Perhaps that is a lesson the Empire needs to learn. We have been stagnant for longer than I care to admit. Change is never easy, Chen acknowledged. But in our experience, it's always worth it. As the human ship and the Vaxian fleet maintained their positions near the Nexus Gateway, two civilizations with vastly different histories began the delicate process of building a bridge between their worlds. And somewhere in the vastness of space, watching this unexpected development with interest, other eyes took note. The galaxy was about to become a much more interesting place.